I'm Mike Netzer with datacenterHawk, and today we're talking with Santiago Suinaga, CEO of Infrastructure Masons. Santi, thanks for being here with us. You came here by way of Phoenix. What was going on in Phoenix?
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the invite, and more than glad to be here with you, the datacenterHawk podcast and audience. Yeah, I came from Phoenix because we had our iMasons local chapter there in Phoenix. We're running local chapters in many places, many cities in the world. We just had one a couple of weeks ago in Denver. Actually,
yes, I think Ed, our regional director for North America, Ed was there. He said it was a great event.
Yeah,
that was the inaugural Denver meeting.
That's right. Yeah, we invited Ed because Ed based there in Denver, and with around with many stakeholders, you will be surprised at the amount of companies, data center companies that are headquartered in Denver.
I am surprised that was just the inaugural meeting in Denver, because I think it's like Virginia, maybe Dallas, and then Denver as far as number of data center executives where they're based. It is crazy how, and somebody explain it. I'd like to know your take on why that is. Ed has an opinion, but I'd love to know why you think Denver is such a hot spot.
Yeah, if you think about the deployments, obviously you have Northern Virginia, Dallas, Phoenix, Atlanta, Chicago, and so. But in terms of talent, executives, Denver is a good hub for talent, and probably it all came from the telecom old days, right? Having some telecom companies there in the mountain states, especially in Denver, with the former Level 3, CenturyLink, Sayo, and so, and some other companies that are headquartered in there, like CoreSite, Stack, Cologix,
there's a ton,
Vantage, among others, right?
And I think part of it is it's just a really cool place to live.
Yeah.
Like there's an attraction, and with more and more people having the ability to work remotely, it makes a lot of sense. But there is, I think to your point as well, some of that legacy company holdover from the old telecom days. So
yeah,
at any rate, well, there's a ton there. So congrats on getting that off the ground, and obviously Phoenix as well. So kind of before we jump into iMasons and what they're doing, I'd love to hear kind of your background in the space and how you got from, pre-Keo, Keo to iMasons.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in this industry for about 20 years, right? Like many of us, we got in this industry probably kind of by accident or so. I was previously working with my father in the early voice over IP. That's my first exposure to data centers and sites back in the early 2000s and so. Then I joined Keo, and that's an interesting story because I joined first as an interim then, and eventually after some years I became the CEO for the Keo data centers. But that's a good example for new talent coming into the industry, that there's opportunities out there, right? Nowadays you are seeing many companies just being creating from scratch for data center deployments, and there's a tremendous opportunity for people out there. So I spent there like around 20 years. I was previously running, in Keo data center operations and business in Mexico, Central America, Colombia. And besides LATAM, also we built some data centers in Spain and in the U.S. actually, in Southern California. We have a couple in San Diego, so those were very, very interesting ones. And then in the story with iMasons, I joined first as a member in 2018 after reading about Dean's story, Dean Nelson, the founder, around what was the iMasons purpose and mission. I found it interesting, so I joined as a member. And then in 2020, because Keo joined as a company, I got a seat on the advisory council to provide some of the insights of LATAM insights, and getting as well insights from the business leaders to polish our value proposition back then. So I got more exposure there in iMasons, and then at the beginning of this year, Jeff and Dean told me about that they were looking for a CEO, right? Because Jeff was planning to retire. Dean was spending more time at Cato Digital, this other endeavor that he's running. And I say, well, why don't take the challenge, right? And try to help and support the industry from a different angle and perspective. So I'm here. I just, joined in July 1st, and it's been a busy almost 6 months,
Every time I turn around, you're in a different city.
Yeah,
or country for that matter.
Yeah, I've been in the road like almost every other week or at some point in time every week. So, but it's very interesting, trying to collaborate and network with many people that has amazing stories around this industry in many places.
I think it's great for for iMasons to have gotten someone who's run a data center business. I mean, obviously having the executive level experience for any business is helpful, but having it as a data center business, I think is going to help them kind of continue to grow that vision and kind of impact that they're having. But for people who maybe aren't as aware with iMasons, just give us the headline view of like what are the different initiatives they're involved in and how they're kind of working to grow the data center space.
Yeah, absolutely. So iMasons is perhaps it may be the largest professional association for the digital infrastructure / data center industry. From its inception in 2016, we have united more than 6,000 people, right, in participating in our initiatives. They represent investment and projects of around $200 billion in more than 130 countries, right? So the original purpose and mission of iMasons is precisely unite the builders that we call of the digital age, right? Because even before AI, were the builders of the internet, right? And the mission is for them to come together to exchange knowledge and expertise around different matters, right? Different concerns, challenges, because in those particular meetings, right, you identify and tackle some challenges for the industry, right? Like we have identified lately, we have 4 main challenges that are on top of mind of most of the people, right? This is the access to power. We call it the 4 Ps. Access to power, the people, access to people, talent. That's another constraint, right? Perception is a big thing, right? You have all the community pushbacks and not in my backyard and so, and we haven't done a great job because of, our industry has always been kind of discreet and so in the early beginnings, and people don't even realize what's behind the scenes to deliver the experience they touch every day, probably a lot of minutes a day on the daily life. So we need to build a positive perception and plan it, the fourth P is the planet, in terms of sustainability. Now with AI, it's even more challenging. So we're running programs and initiatives to help the professionals and companies in the industry to address those challenges and remove obstacles to growth.
Yeah. Which of those 4 Ps, we probably hear about those, the same people that are talking to you are talking to us in a lot of ways, but specifically on the power side, what can be done, or what is happening to kind of help improve the process for procuring of power, assuming a portion of that, or some to most, is going to be renewable. So those kind of the first and last Ps you mentioned are really interrelated.
Yeah.
But what types of things is iMasons doing to help those groups kind of get access to power? Is it on both sides of the aisle with the utility operators as well as the data center developers?
Yeah. So for instance, we released and published the State of the Industry report, our very first back in April 2024. But we looked the stats, and some of the interviews were, performed during the last part of 2023, even before AI, right, was kind of taking off. So I'm right now in the process of, conducting interviews and collecting the information for updating the report. Now with the AI more like into the place, and obviously power is a big challenge, and it's top of mind for everyone, right? I think the opportunity right now is massive. We're in the point in time that the industry, it's more critical than ever, right? Historically, right? With the vacancy rates are at the lowest historical point in time, and you have a market where the demand is all-time high and the supply is all-time low, right? So that gives you like the dynamics of where we at this point on the market and the industry, right? Everybody's building larger, and the largest markets are constrained. So that gives the opportunity for non-traditional markets to arise, because before we were, trying to bring the power into the data centers. Now that we have realized that that's a heavy lift. So the way we're seeing some of the deployments and the rise of non-traditional markets is now data centers are going towards where the power is. Wherever it's power, so you see the evolution of some markets, but also you're seeing even deployments in North Dakota or places that you wouldn't think of before because you have the top traditional markets. In terms of the power, through iMasons, we're running different committees, right? We are founded in 4 strategic pillars: innovation, education, inclusion, and sustainability. Because throughout those committees, we're trying to address some of the 4 P's challenges. And through the innovation committee, it's impressive that every day you see a different solution that might be the promise or contributing to resolve the power issue, whether it's we have read a lot of articles, news, letters, and so about nuclear, SMRs, green hydrogen, even different solar solutions now with feasible storage, right? Because that's the complication for the data center industry, right? We like to go more towards renewable, but this industry requires 24/7 running. So there are some kind of renewables that are more aligned to what's needed, and some others that is a challenge. But at least they can contribute at certain periods of time of the day. So to your question, I think on the power, there are plenty of solutions that midterm could become feasible. In the short term, I think we could be expecting to rely more in natural gas for terms of off-grid solutions. In the meantime, many countries and regions perform their works to reinforce the transmission lines, right? But I will say it's a combination of whatever you can bring power, even from,
it's all of the above.
Yeah, below the rocks, whatever you can bring power, I think will help.
Okay. Talking about the people side of things, we look at North America data center market growing, somewhere between 25 and 30% a year, of the last 5 years, and in theory for the next handful of years, as best we can tell. That's just going to require a ton of people to build those data centers, to staff them, to manage the financials for them. So how is your group working to, I guess, recruit people and educate them, towards a career in data centers?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because at the end of the time, all these companies, all these processes are run by people, right? And in this industry, it's a relative new industry compared to other industries, right? And there's a kind of a mystery, and you can say if you're in the data center industry and you have some friends and family, sometimes you're having a hard time explaining what you do. And that's precisely what we need to address and solve, right? Because they're not strange for what data centers really do, right? If they take a look of what they interact with most of their minutes at daily life with the mobile devices, they are not aware of what's behind the scenes. If they know, there are people that are more curious than others that would like to participate and know more. And you can say there's, I remember to have seen a Wall Street Journal post that said, what industry can provide a 6-figure salary without a college degree? Well, that's the data center industry. Yeah. So what we're doing is trying to run programs and initiatives to feed the pipeline in terms of talent pipeline, people pipeline, right? Because there are some stats that says because of this industry has been developed by people that came over from other industries like the telecom, like the early days of the chips and so on, and Silicon Valley hardware, and so there are some stats that basically are pointing out that over the next 3 years, we'll have a shortage of 300,000 people in the industry. And you're combining that at the point in time that we need to deploy twice, or perhaps by 2030, 3 times the capacity that has been deployed, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to bring people from other backgrounds, because it's not feasible. Basically, the people that are currently in the industry, you can obviously develop and grow them so, but you need to bring people from other industries that would like to participate. Like many of us, we have landed in this industry, right? And so we're running programs, right, through our education pillar, right? In terms of providing mentorship, we have the Capstone Project. We have a good alliance with Nomad Futurists. They're providing mentors to our Capstone projects, or we're going to college students, right, to basically mentor them and eventually turn them into internships in the different companies. And so we are launching a job matching platform in our website, right, that basically will map the skill sets and interest from the applicant side, so the recruiter side also can have some filters based upon the skill set. That's a very interesting tool. And we have our inclusion pillar, right? So we're trying to bring underrepresented groups and talent into the industry. I remember 20 years ago, if you look conference, all the people came almost from the same backgrounds, right? Now you're looking at more women into the industry. Right now, there's a stats that the industry, out of the workforce, only 10% are women. So if you think that the women are like 50% of the world population, and we're, complaining about that we have a talent shortfall and constraint, if we run programs and initiatives that will attract and retain people from that group, from the women's side, probably we can solve some part of the equation. And we have run a very good initiative called the iMasons Women. So the iMasons Women is very successfully running in different parts of the world. Actually, in Phoenix, when I was yesterday, we ran our first iMasons Women in Phoenix. Also, another group that has been very successful is the armed forces, because we have identified that from the military, some of the veterans have a very adequate skill set for working in the industry, because they are used to manage complex systems and manage complex and critical situations, right? So those are a good fit, and among others groups that we have. But ultimately, what we're helping and trying to accomplish is to feed more talent into the industry by increasing industry awareness and demystifying digital infrastructure for the common people out there.
I was going to say, that's a service to all of us that get asked by our relatives at the holidays, what do we do? And we're like, well, there's these buildings and they're really expensive. No. We say, or you could just kind of punt and be like, I build the internet. But I think you're right, to educating people who are totally unfamiliar, people who think the cloud is actually in the cloud, about the realities of the industry as a whole, that it's A, it's critical, B, it's growing substantially year over year, and C, there's a ton of opportunity. I mean, I was talking to an electrical contractor here in Dallas that does a lot of data center work, and they've got this whole program to recruit kids out of high school, train them for 4 years, go to on the job training while they're working, and they graduate, I think, as an apprentice. I'm sorry, a journeyman, the second stage of the electrical contractor. So they've got this great program, but even that, I think there's still a need for additional programs like that to, again, not inspire, but make people aware that these jobs exist, and then just to be aware that this industry is growing at a huge rate, and we think it's going to continue to grow. There's going to be continued opportunity for kind of young people. I think, not to go on a cultural PSA here, but like, you hear a lot about young people not complaining there's not as much opportunity as there used to be, or they don't make as much money as their parents, or they're more pessimistic than their parents. And this is a great story on the other side of that coin to go, hey, there's a ton of opportunity in this space.
And yes, and I think there's also a misconception that this industry is just for technical background and profiles, right? And that's not entirely true. We have a lot of job openings and roles and positions across the industry, right? For many different backgrounds, right? So you will certainly find a place in the digital infrastructure, and that's a very good industry to be, because it has been recession proof, has been even when COVID hit, we understood that we rely a lot in digital to the world keeps running, and ultimately it's an industry that touches every other single industry, because if you think about all the process you do in your daily life, all the apps, all the things
all
that
goes
you
back
do,
to a data center.
Yeah, it's like, to your point, I think cloud is not a very good term to describe what we do, because some people have like kind of perception that everything is floating and magical, transmitting to,
They
to
do.
the devices.
They do.
But there was a very nice report, I believe, from Sami Badri that is named "The Cloud Has Four Walls." So ultimately, everything is physical, right?
Yes.
It's tangible. You
Yeah,
can feel
100%. So kind of from your perspective, as you're, now in this kind of global organization role, you're seeing kind of data centers all over the globe. And so I imagine you're getting like a very interesting perspective on kind of the state of the industry. So I'd be interested to know, like, where do you think kind of what's next, what's coming for this space? I mean, I think the things that we've all identified is, right, the rise of AI, increased density, rack density to some extent, or to a very large extent. Again, renewable energy being more and more of a focus or even requirement in some areas. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the what's next coming in the next few years in the data center industry kind of globally.
You know what I'm seeing is that right now most of the deployments are still on towards the Gen AI training, right? So they're latency agnostic and obviously looking for whatever it's a power, right? But I will say that probably in 3 years from now we'll be starting to see the flip towards inference, right? And that's very important because inference is where the really use-based case application is, right? Where the profits and the money of all this huge amount of investment is gonna create the returns, right? And I think it's where most companies, private equities, and so are betting on, right? Because right now, this industry is in the spotlight, right? Before, you didn't have a lot of appetite from many stakeholders. Now you see all the private equities and investors trying to navigate and get into the digital infrastructure and data center industry. But going onto the inference thing, it's gonna represent different challenges because it needs to be more distributed, more latency sensitive. I think some of the markets are, if they would like to capture that opportunity, they will need to invest now that they're seeing what's happening with the power side, with the people, and so to capture that growth because it's gonna be more distributed. It resembles me like similar with other waves, right? Like starting with us in the 70s when the client server thing, when the mainframe, then we go to distributed computing. Then when the cloud arrived, you have the cloud regions concentrated in Northern Virginia, Silicon Valley, and then the edge became a reality. So cloud was distributed everywhere, and now we will see something similar with the AI, right? We're preparing the training phase in probably well-established market and non-traditional market, large capacities, but there will be a point of time that inference will be very much distributed. So as mentioned, it will represent other type of challenges, right? And I think if we would like to capture all that growth, we need to address some of those challenges. Another aspect that is still a question mark for many of us and now in the market, if all those capacities being announced and so are gonna really go live soon or really going live, right? And I think that will be the case because the history has shown us that the humankind, every time they uses more, we use more technology, not less. And every single capacity, as you can see, the vacancy rates is taken, and it will be taken because the way of the adoption of technology is just outstanding here. But the thing here is, if the date for that to happen will depend in our ability to remove the obstacles and hurdles to the industry to thrive, right? That will be the difference. Probably could be earlier or could be later, right? And basically, we need to remove those challenges for the growth, and not just growth. We need to grow responsible because the society cares about it, right? Yep. And iMasons is here to help with that.
Yeah, I think it's become very clear to me, even as a relative newcomer in the industry, that there's a lot of maturation yet to happen, and it's across the board, right? Where people once they understand what data centers provide, they're going to, I think, have a little bit more amenable attitude towards them and but getting there is going to take time, and getting all those kind of kinks in the system worked out. It is going to take time, but I think to your point, the work you're doing, some of the work, little bit of work we're doing on the Data Center Hawk side to, kind of track it, are super helpful to get people, on board, educated, understanding, and help to build a solution that kind of works for everybody. So certainly appreciate your time coming by here to talk about it. Love all the work you're doing at iMasons. Obviously, we'll link to your stuff below, but look to join a local chapter if there's one nearby. And again, appreciate your time, Santi.
Oh, thank you very much, Mike. And yes, we definitely need to start a Dallas chapter because there's a lot of activity going on here. I'm also based in Texas, so
Yep. Give you an excuse to come up more often.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite, for the time, and for all your audience in Data Center Hawk. A great platform to take a look at the industry insights and make better decisions.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.